I can still hear the way her voice trembled when she said, "Dad, you've been nothing but a burden. You can't stay here any longer." That moment, I wish I had seen it coming. But like any fool, I trusted my daughter to do what was right. I spent 30 years working my hands to the bone to provide for her mother, for our home. And that's how she repaid me, with a phone call that I'll never forget. I remember it like it was yesterday. The call came when I was sitting in my worn-out recliner, the one that used to be Ellen's before she passed. It had been quiet around the house, just the way I liked it. I hadn't spoken to Caitlin much lately, a few texts here and there, nothing more than the occasional check-in. I hadn't realized how much distance had grown between us until I heard those words spill from her mouth. She thought I was going to stay silent, and for a moment I almost did. But something inside me snapped. I was no longer the man who had put his family first, no longer the man who always said yes. The worst part, I had heard her. Caitlin had forgotten to hang up the phone after our conversation, and I overheard everything. "He's just a burden now," she said, her voice cold. "He can go to a nursing home and we'll sell the house. The house alone will cover the costs, and then we can finally get the life we deserve." Life they deserve. It wasn't about my life anymore, it was about them. It was always about them. At that moment, I realized I had been nothing more than an ATM to her. I gave and gave and gave. My own needs, my dreams, my dignity, all got sacrificed along the way. But I wasn't going to take it anymore. No, not now, not when I had worked my whole life to create something she thought she could just throw away like last week's leftovers. She thought I was old. She thought I was weak. But Caitlin didn't know who she was dealing with. I'm Roy Hayes, 55 years old, widowed for the last 2 years after Ellen passed. We had built a life from nothing, from the ground up, brick by brick. We didn't have much, but what we did have, we built together. And now, in that moment, I understood my daughter had taken everything for granted. I hadn't realized how much until I overheard her call. I didn't hang up. I didn't even breathe. I just sat there, listening to my own flesh and blood talk about me like I was already dead. But I wasn't dead, and I wasn't going down quietly. If you want to know what happened next, how I made sure my daughter learned just how wrong she was, you'll want to hear the rest of the story. There's more to this than you'd think, trust me. It was only a few minutes after I hung up when my mind started racing. I thought of the house, our house, the one Ellen and I had poured our blood, sweat, and tears into. Caitlin didn't understand the value of it. She never did. For her, it was just a piece of property, a thing to be sold. But for me, it was everything. Every nail, every board, every single inch of that house was a testament to the life we'd built. And now, my daughter thought she could just take it from me. It wasn't just about the house, though. It was about the betrayal, the coldness in her voice. I had given everything for her, and she had repaid me with nothing but contempt. She had always taken from me, but now she was crossing a line. I couldn't let that slide. I wasn't some old man who could be pushed around anymore. But I needed to be careful. I needed to plan this out. I couldn't just make a scene or confront her outright. No, I had to play the long game. I had to make sure that when she realized what I had done, she would regret ever doubting me. I spent the next few days thinking, going through the details of everything I had built over the years. My mind raced through the memories, the long hours at work, the sacrifices I made, the nights I stayed up late to keep everything running smoothly. I had always been the provider, the protector, the strong one. But I was done being that man for her. The first part of my plan was simple. I needed to secure my financials. I hadn't realized how much Caitlin and Jeremy, her husband, had come to rely on me, not just for emotional support but financially. I had helped them with their wedding, co-signed on some of their loans, and even paid off their credit card debts. But it wasn't just money. It was control. They thought they could just ask for money whenever they needed it and I would give it. But I wasn't going to be their personal piggy bank anymore. I sat down at my desk that afternoon and started making calls. First, to the bank. It was time to get the mortgage in my name alone. Time to ensure that no one could just take it from me. And then I made another call to a lawyer. I needed advice on how to protect myself from what they were planning to do. Caitlin had already made her intentions clear, and I needed to make sure that she couldn't follow through with her plans to sell the house out from under me. I'm not a fool, I knew how these things worked. But Caitlin, she had no idea who she was dealing with. When you're a man who's spent his life building, you don't let go of what's yours without a fight. And Caitlin was going to learn that the hard way. I spent the next few days lying low, acting like nothing had changed. I didn't want to tip Caitlin or Jeremy off. I had to keep up the act of the helpless, aging man who didn't know what was going on around him. That was the key to my plan. They'd underestimated me. They thought I was just some old fool who would sit in my chair and let them push me around. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me fight back until it was too late. I kept my mornings the same. Woke up, brewed my coffee, and sat in the kitchen while the sun crept up over the garden Ellen had planted. It's funny how life can seem so normal when everything inside you is shifting. I would sit at the table, sipping my coffee, and pretend everything was fine, like nothing had changed. I didn't let them see the rage boiling under my skin. That wasn't for them. They wouldn't see it coming. The first step was done. The mortgage was under my name only, and the lawyer had ensured my financial position was safe. But Caitlin, I knew, would be relentless. She would try again. That was the problem with people like her. They never knew when to stop. But I had time. Time was the most dangerous weapon I had. I didn't reach out to her right away. Instead, I watched her from a distance. I began to notice the little things, the texts she'd send asking for money, the way Jeremy would act like he was doing me a favor when he dropped by. It was all part of their game. They thought I didn't see through it, but I did. Every time they came around, I knew exactly what they were up to, and it made my blood boil, but I kept my cool. That Friday evening, Caitlin called me. It was a normal conversation at first, the kind of thing I'd gotten used to over the years. The polite, surface-level exchanges about the weather, her work, Jeremy's latest business project. But then, as always, she got to the point. "Dad, we've been thinking," she said, her voice that smooth tone she always used when she wanted to manipulate me. "You know, the house. It's getting a bit too much for you, isn't it? Maybe it's time we start looking into some options for you, like a nice care facility." I could feel the hair on the back of my neck rise. I didn't let on that I was angry. Instead, I played it cool. "I'm doing just fine here, Caitlin. I don't need any of those places. I'm still perfectly capable of taking care of myself." She paused for a beat, then came the line I had been waiting for, the one that always made me see red. "Well, you know, if you're sure. But Jeremy and I were talking, and we think it's time you start thinking about your future. Maybe it's time to let go of the house. It's just too much for you to manage alone." There it was, the real reason behind it all. The house. Caitlin thought she could push me out and sell it off without a second thought. But she was wrong. She had no idea how far I would go to protect what was mine. I kept my voice calm. "Caitlin, I've made my decisions. I don't need you or Jeremy to make them for me." She didn't like that. I could hear the tension in her voice. "We're just trying to help, Dad. You need to stop being so stubborn about this. You're not getting any younger." And there it was, the final push. The one that stung more than anything. She was using my age against me. She was trying to make me feel small, weak, and dependent. "I don't need help," I said, my voice hardening for the first time. "I'm not a burden to anyone, Caitlin. Not to you, not to anyone. You're mistaken if you think I'm going to let you sell off my life's work." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear her thinking, calculating her next move. But she didn't say anything for a while. Finally she spoke, her voice colder. "Fine, Dad, but just remember we're only trying to do what's best for you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I hung up the phone without saying another word. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I kept my face blank. It wasn't time to act yet. No, Caitlin and Jeremy still had no idea what was coming for them. That night I took a long walk around the house, just like I had so many times before. Ellen's garden was still there, just as she had left it. The flowers she had planted, the bushes she had tended to, they all stood as a reminder of what I had built with her. But the house itself, the one they were trying to take from me, was where my focus lay now. I wasn't going to let them win, not after everything I had given. You see, when you've spent your life working hard, making sacrifices, you don't let someone walk in and take what's yours without a fight. And this time, I wasn't going to lose. But Caitlin and Jeremy didn't know that yet. They would, soon enough. Days passed, dragging by like a slow, unbearable crawl. I kept my routine the same. I wasn't about to let Caitlin or Jeremy know that I was onto them. The calls kept coming, but I didn't answer them. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of knowing how much they had upset me. No, I had bigger plans. They still had no idea what I was capable of. It wasn't about getting angry or making threats. It was about making sure that they would never forget the lesson I was about to teach them. I spent a lot of time in my office these days, something I hadn't done in years. I had paperwork to go through, but it wasn't just that. I was setting my plan into motion, one step at a time. I had to be careful, patient. Every move I made had to be calculated. I had spent years being the good father, the good provider, the good man. But now I was something else. Now I was a man who had been wrong, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. The first thing I did was look into the house. I already had the title in my name alone, but I needed to make sure that nothing could go wrong. I needed to make sure that when the time came, no one could say that I had acted unfairly. So I called in a few favors, had the house appraised again, and made sure everything was legally locked down. I knew that if I was going to make them regret their actions, I had to be absolutely sure that nothing could be used against me. And then came the moment I had been waiting for. One day, as I sat in my office going over the paperwork, my phone rang. It was Caitlin again. I didn't answer at first. I let it ring, hoping she would just leave a message, but she didn't. She called back and then again and again. After the fifth time, I finally picked up. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel the tension building inside me. "Dad, are you there?" Caitlin's voice was urgent, a little panicked. "Dad, we need to talk. Something happened." My heart skipped a beat. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I could sense the change in her tone. This wasn't the same casual conversation I was used to. "Something happened. What's going on, Caitlin?" She hesitated. "Dad, you need to come over. There's a problem. Jeremy and I were at the bank and, well, we've hit a bit of a snag with the house." I leaned back in my chair, fighting the urge to smile. This was it, the opening I had been waiting for. "What kind of snag?" I asked, trying to sound concerned. "Well," she continued, "when we tried to start the process of selling the house, we ran into some issues with the mortgage. It's not as simple as we thought. There's something in the paperwork. We don't know what to do." I knew exactly what the issue was. I had already made sure of it, but I played along, acting as if I was just as confused as she was. "All right, Caitlin, I'll be there in a bit. Let me grab my things and head over." I hung up the phone, and for the first time in days, I felt the weight of the situation lift off my shoulders. I was about to watch her face when she realized just how far I had gone. I arrived at Caitlin's house just after noon. The place looked the same as it always had, too perfect, too polished. Everything had a place and everything was in that place. It was the kind of house Jeremy always dreamed of, all clean lines and high-end furniture. It was a far cry from the home Ellen and I had built, but it wasn't the house that mattered now. It was what was coming next. Caitlin greeted me at the door, her face a mask of concern. She was trying hard to hide the panic I could see brewing in her eyes, but I could feel it. I could always tell when she was lying. It was one of those things a father picks up on after so many years of knowing his child. "Dad, thank you for coming," she said, ushering me inside. "It's just, we don't know what to do. We've been sitting on this paperwork for hours and we can't make sense of it. Jeremy's freaking out." I followed her into the living room where Jeremy was pacing back and forth, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. He looked worried, his brow furrowed, his hands running through his hair. "Good. Let him sweat. What's going on? I asked again, trying to sound calm, though inside I was practically bursting to see them squirm. Caitlin handed me the stack of papers. I pretended to scan them, though I knew exactly what I would find. I had already seen the paperwork earlier. The bank had confirmed it. So what's the problem, Caitlin? I asked, leaning back in my chair. It looks fine to me. Jeremy stopped pacing and looked at me like I had just spoken in another language. What do you mean it looks fine? We're trying to sell this house, and there's something in the mortgage documents that's not making sense. We can't sell it, not unless we fix this issue. I could see his desperation now. The house, the life they had built, was on the line and they didn't know what to do. They were out of their depth, but I was. I stood up, grabbed the papers from Caitlin's hands, and looked them over one more time, then dropped the bomb. The problem, Caitlin, I said slowly, is that the house isn't just yours to sell. She froze. Jeremy's mouth dropped open. What do you mean? Jeremy stammered. I gave them a cold smile. The mortgage was canceled. The house has been in my name for months now. You can't sell it and you can't touch it without my permission. There was a beat of stunned silence. Then Caitlin's face went pale and her hand flew to her mouth. No, you didn't. I nodded. Oh, I did. You thought you could push me aside, sell my home, and get away with it. No, Caitlin, it doesn't work like that. Jeremy was speechless. He looked at Caitlin and then back at me, his face going from disbelief to anger. You've got to be kidding me, he finally spat. You think this is some kind of game? You can't just cancel a mortgage like that. I leaned forward. Oh, I can, and I did. You see, Jeremy, when you play dirty with people like me, you get burned. Caitlin has been playing a game with me, one she thought she was winning. But this time the tables have turned. You're not going to sell this house and you're not going to push me out. You've got to deal with me now on my terms. Caitlin looked like she was about to cry. But we need the money, Dad. You've had the house long enough. It's time for you to let go, please. I stood up, looking down at her. No, Caitlin. The house stays with me, and you'll learn just what happens when you try to take what doesn't belong to you. That was the moment everything changed. The moment when Caitlin and Jeremy finally understood the cost of their betrayal. But the best part, this was only the beginning. If you think this is bad, wait until you hear how it all unraveled. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the next part. The air in the room was thick with disbelief. I could feel the tension radiating off Caitlin and Jeremy, their shock palpable, but I didn't allow myself to feel any sympathy. No, it wasn't about that anymore. This was about sending a message they would never forget. Jeremy, as expected, started to sputter, his face flushed with frustration. You can't just do this, Roy. This is my wife's house too. You don't get to make decisions like this without consulting us. He took a step forward, his voice rising. We've been working on this for months. Do you have any idea how much we've sacrificed? And now you're going to pull this kind of stunt. I could hear his voice shaking. He was mad, but he was also scared. They both were. They'd been living under the assumption that they could get away with whatever they wanted. Caitlin, always the more composed of the two, was standing in the corner, her hands trembling at her sides. I could see her mind working, scrambling to find a way out of the mess she had created, but there was no way out. I watched them both, not saying a word. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me squirm, of seeing any emotion other than cold indifference. I had waited too long for this. Caitlin's face twisted into something that could have been guilt, or maybe just the realization of how badly things had gone off the rails. Dad, why didn't you just tell us? She finally asked, her voice small, almost pleading. We could have worked something out. I felt a flicker of something. Was it amusement? No, it wasn't that simple. I just felt this overwhelming need to make her see the truth. The truth that, no matter how much she tried to disguise it, she had never truly cared for me. All those years, all those moments when she looked at me like I was just an inconvenience in her life. That's what this had always been about. You don't get it, Caitlin, I said slowly, each word deliberate. It's not about the house. It's about respect. You and Jeremy have been using me for far too long and I let it happen, but not anymore. Jeremy's jaw clenched and I could see him weigh his options. He was sizing me up now, considering whether he could push me around. I almost laughed at the thought. He had no idea. No idea what I was capable of, what I had planned. It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't about the house. It was about something far more dangerous. The desire to show them that I wasn't going to let them walk all over me any longer. Caitlin stepped closer, her voice shaking with a mixture of frustration and fear. Dad, please, we didn't mean it like this. We were just trying to help you. We thought you wanted to be closer to us, that this was for the best. For the best. The words hit me like a slap in the face. For the best. I had spent my life sacrificing for her, giving her everything, and this was how she repaid me. How she treated me like I was some piece of furniture to be discarded when it was convenient. I wasn't going to buy into her crocodile tears. No, Caitlin, I said, my voice steady now, almost calm. This wasn't about helping me. It was about taking control. You thought that because I was getting older, I was weak, that I would just hand over everything you wanted. But you were wrong. You don't get to make decisions for me anymore. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She was finally speechless, and I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. I had wanted this for so long, to make her understand that I was no longer the man who would just roll over. But now that the words had left my mouth, I couldn't shake the feeling of finality that settled in the pit of my stomach. Jeremy paced again, clearly losing his patience. This is insane, Roy. You can't just keep the house for yourself. This is our future too. His voice was thick with anger, but there was an edge of desperation there. He was scared now, realizing that the walls were closing in. You think this is about the house? I asked him, letting the question hang in the air. It's not. It's about what you've been taking from me. The years of exploitation, the money, the constant demands. It all ends now. They were silent. Good. Let them absorb it. Let them feel the weight of the truth. I walked to the window, looking out over the yard, the same yard where Ellen and I had spent so many afternoons planting flowers, watching the seasons change. It felt so distant now, as though those days belonged to someone else. Here's the thing, I said, turning back to face them, my voice steady and final. I've made my decision. The house stays with me. It's mine and no one is going to take it from me. Not you, not Jeremy, not anyone. Caitlin opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. Don't bother. This conversation is over. For a moment they stood there, dumbfounded. I could tell they hadn't expected this. They thought I would bend. They thought I would cave under the pressure. They had no idea that I had already made up my mind, that their actions had sealed their fate. But this wasn't just about the house. It was about me taking back control. It was about making sure that in the end they would remember who I was. That's what they didn't understand. They had been so caught up in their own plans that they had forgotten the one thing that mattered: respect. And once you lose respect, once you've burned bridges with someone who's been there for you your whole life, there's no coming back from it. Get out, I said quietly, and don't come back until you've figured out how to treat me with the respect I deserve. They left, both of them walking out the door without another word. I could feel the weight of their departure, the tension still hanging thick in the air. I didn't feel relief, not yet, but I knew I had won this round, and it was only the beginning. What I hadn't told them, what they still didn't know, was that I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. This was just the first step of a plan that had been years in the making. The real work was about to begin. But if you think that's all I had up my sleeve, just wait. You're going to want to hear what happens next. Trust me. The days after Caitlin and Jeremy left were strangely quiet. It was the kind of silence that creeps in when everything you've known is thrown into chaos, like the calm before the storm. I spent my time in the house, walking the rooms that once felt full of life, now empty, save for the echo of my own footsteps. The walls seemed to hold their breath, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did, at least not right away. The house still felt like home. The familiar scent of wood polish, the creaking floors, and the old photos on the walls, they were all reminders of a life I had built with Ellen. A life that Caitlin and Jeremy had tried to take from me. But they had no idea. They thought they were playing some game, some simple transaction where they could push me aside and claim what was mine. They didn't know the lengths I would go to protect what was rightfully mine. A week passed without word from them, which wasn't surprising. I knew they would need time to process the shock. But eventually, they would come crawling back. They would have no choice. I had played my cards carefully, and now it was only a matter of waiting for them to realize they had no other options. It was on the 8th day after their departure that I got the call. It was Caitlin this time. It was Jeremy. "Roy," his voice was tight, stressed. "We need to talk. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Caitlin and we didn't mean for things to go like this." I could hear the hesitation in his tone, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered everything they had put me through, the way they had used me, manipulated me, and then discarded me like I was nothing. My sympathy evaporated in an instant. "Talk about what, Jeremy?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, though inside I was savoring this moment. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. "We were thinking it over," he continued, his words coming faster now. "And, well, Caitlin and I both think you should come over to our place. We'll work this out. We can figure out a way to get everything back to normal. You can come live with us and we'll all make this work. We'll even let you keep the house." I wasn't surprised by his offer. I had been expecting something like this. It was the classic move, the plea for reconciliation after they had pushed me too far. They had thought I would bend, that I would come crawling back. But they had no idea what they had started. I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window. The sky was overcast and there was a chill in the air, even though it was nearly spring. It seemed fitting. "You think you can just smooth things over with a little offer, Jeremy," I said slowly, my voice cutting through the phone line like a knife. "You think that after everything you've done, I'm going to forget how you treated me?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Roy, please," he said, his voice strained. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just trying to." "Don't," I interrupted. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to take back the things you've done. You crossed a line, Jeremy, and now there's no going back. You thought I wouldn't fight back, didn't you?" He didn't respond right away, and I could almost hear him struggling to find the right words. But the truth was, there was nothing he could say. There was nothing left for him to do but face the consequences of his actions. They thought they could just take what they wanted from me, but they didn't realize how much I had been holding back. "You know what the worst part is?" I continued, my voice low. "You never once stopped to think about the damage you were doing. You never once thought about how much I've given to you, how much I've sacrificed. And now you want to come back and pretend like everything's fine." He finally spoke again, his voice softer now. "So, what do you want from us? What's it going to take to fix this?" I could hear Caitlin in the background, her voice muffled, but I could tell she was there, listening. She was probably just as desperate as Jeremy. I knew they had no idea how to handle this, and that gave me more power than I had ever had over them. "I want something you can't give me, Jeremy," I said quietly. "I want my dignity back. And I want you to understand something. You don't get to take from people forever. You don't get to use someone just because you think they'll always be there to pick up the pieces. You've taken everything I had, and now you're going to have to deal with the consequences." I could hear Caitlin's voice now, faint but clear. "Dad, please, we're sorry." I paused, feeling the weight of her apology wash over me. It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. The years of resentment, the years of being treated like an ATM, like I was nothing more than a source of money and support, had built up into something far deeper than she could ever understand. "I'm not coming over," I said coldly. "I'm not going to sit in your house and pretend that things can go back to the way they were. You don't get to control me anymore. You don't get to dictate my life. I've spent too many years living for other people. Now it's my turn." There was silence on the other end of the line. Jeremy didn't know how to respond, and Caitlin's voice was too far away for me to hear clearly. But I knew this was the moment when everything would change for them. They had crossed the line, and there was no coming back. They thought this was over, but I hadn't even begun yet. "If you want to know how far I'll go, just wait," I said softly. "This is just the beginning. You're going to regret the day you ever thought you could push me around." With that, I hung up the phone. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was the kind of silence that felt like victory. The stakes were higher now. The game was no longer about money or the house. It was about something far more important: control. And they still didn't understand just how much they had underestimated me. The real show was about to begin. But you haven't seen the worst of it yet. If you think this is the end, you're wrong. There's more to come. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. The week following my call with Jeremy was oddly calm. I had expected them to come around again, maybe show up at my door, but there was nothing. No texts, no calls, no apologies. It was as if they had suddenly disappeared from the world like ghosts fading into the fog. I could almost hear the wheels turning in their heads. They were plotting, scheming, trying to figure out how to fix this mess. They still didn't get it. They still didn't understand that there was no fixing it. I had started to feel a strange sense of peace. I hadn't felt this in years. There was no pressure to answer to anyone anymore. No more pretending to be someone I wasn't. No more being the sacrificial lamb for their comfort and convenience. It was just me and the house. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. But freedom doesn't come without consequences. No sooner had I begun to settle into this new life than the real trouble started. It was Thursday when I got the call. This time, it wasn't from Jeremy or Caitlin. It was from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was sharp, businesslike, and unfamiliar. "Mr. Hayes, this is Trevor Lambert from Lambert & Co. Real Estate," the voice said. "I'm calling in regards to the house at 1208 Pinecrest. We've been instructed to begin the process of preparing the property for sale." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. "Sale," I repeated, my voice betraying none of the tension coursing through me. "What are you talking about?" "Mr. Hayes, we've received instructions from your daughter, Caitlin Hayes, to list the property and begin the sale process. She and her husband, Jeremy, have provided us with the necessary documentation. The house will be sold at auction unless you wish to contest it within the next 48 hours. I couldn't believe it. They were trying to go behind my back, trying to sell the house without my permission. I had made it clear that the house was not for sale, but Caitlin, in her desperation, had found a way around it. She thought she could pull strings, use connections to override me, but what she didn't know was that I had anticipated this move. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "I'll be contesting it," I said, my voice flat. "You'll hear from my lawyer." There was a slight pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear Trevor's smile. "Very well, Mr. Hayes, if that's how you'd like to proceed. But do remember, the clock is ticking. We'll expect to hear from you soon." I hung up without saying another word. For a moment, I just stood there, letting the anger course through me. I had known they'd try something like this. Caitlin had underestimated me, and now she was making the fatal mistake of trying to get around me, thinking she could win without consequences. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for my lawyer, Tom Grant. Tom had been helping me with all the legal matters over the years, and I trusted him. He was no nonsense, straightforward, and he owed me a favor or two. I needed his help now more than ever. "Tom," I said when he picked up, "I need your help. Caitlin's gone behind my back and contacted a real estate company to sell the house. I need to stop this." I could hear Tom sigh on the other end of the line. "She's really pushing you, huh?" "She doesn't know when to stop," I replied. "I'm not going to let her sell what's mine. I need you to draw up an injunction. I'll stop them dead in their tracks." Tom paused for a moment. All right, Roy, I'll get on it. But you know you're playing a dangerous game here. Caitlin's not going to take this lying down. I'm well aware of that, I said, the cold edge in my voice sharp enough to cut. But I'm done being the nice guy. Tom gave a low chuckle. I'll get it done. You'll have the paperwork by tomorrow morning. We ended the call and I sat there thinking. This was it. The gloves were off. Caitlin and Jeremy thought they could take the house from me, thought they could control me, manipulate me like they had for years. But they had no idea how far I was willing to go. The next day I received the injunction. It was a small victory, but it felt like I had just won a battle in what was becoming a much larger war. The paperwork was airtight. I was now legally protected from anyone trying to sell the house without my consent. But as satisfying as it was, I knew it wouldn't be enough. Caitlin would come at me from another angle. That was her style. That night I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something big. And sure enough, around 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I hadn't been expecting anyone, and when I opened the door, I found Caitlin standing there, looking like she had just walked out of a nightmare. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling with what I could only describe as fear. "Please, we need to talk." I stepped aside, letting her in, though I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear what she had to say. She walked into the living room, her eyes avoiding mine as if she couldn't bear to meet my gaze. "Caitlin, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I knew she was about to ask for something, but I had no idea what it would be. She looked up at me, and for the first time in weeks I saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "Dad, I know you're angry. I know we've done things that you can't forgive. But please, you don't have to do this. We're your family. We just want to fix this." I looked at her, my heart pounding in my chest, but I said nothing. This wasn't the time for sympathy. This wasn't the time to let her off the hook. She stepped closer, her voice growing desperate. "Please, Dad, we're begging you, just let us sell the house. It's all we have left. We don't know what else to do." Her words hit me like a physical blow. We don't know what else to do. They had no idea that they had already crossed the line. They had no idea that there was no coming back from this. I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there watching her, waiting for the right moment to strike. Finally, I spoke, my voice as cold as I could make it. "You really think I'm going to give up everything for you, Caitlin? After everything you've done? After everything you've taken from me?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered how easily she had discarded me, how easily she had taken my help for granted. "No, Caitlin," I said quietly. "It's too late for that." Caitlin stood in front of me, her eyes red from crying. And for a moment, I almost saw the little girl she used to be, the one who clung to my side when she was scared, the one who once looked at me like I was invincible. But that girl was gone. The woman standing before me now wasn't someone I recognized, not the daughter I had spent decades trying to protect. No, this was someone entirely different, someone who thought she could walk all over me without consequences. She wiped her eyes, her hands trembling as she struggled to keep it together. "Dad, please," she whispered. "You don't understand. We need this. We don't have anything else. We just need the house and then we can fix everything. I promise we'll make it right." She was desperate. The desperation in her voice was almost enough to make me second-guess everything. Almost, but I didn't, I couldn't. I couldn't let her have her way anymore. This wasn't about forgiveness. This wasn't about family. This was about power. The power they thought they had over me and the power I had just taken back. "Caitlin," I said, my voice cold, cutting through the room like a knife. "You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. You had your chance to do right by me, but you didn't want to. You wanted to take everything from me, and now you're going to have to deal with the consequences." Her face crumpled, the facade cracking, and for a brief moment I saw the daughter I had tried to save from herself, the one who had once trusted me with her life. "Dad, please don't do this. You're my father, I'm your daughter. We're family." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. Not this time. You're right, I said, my voice unwavering. We are family. But family isn't about manipulation. It's not about using someone when it's convenient. It's about respect. And you lost that respect a long time ago. Her shoulders slumped as if the weight of my words finally hit her. She took a deep breath, like she was trying to gather the last ounce of strength left in her. But it wasn't enough. She could beg, she could plead, she could cry all she wanted. The decision had been made. And just like that, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was no longer a conversation between father and daughter. It was a battle of wills. The years of emotional manipulation, the years of resentment and guilt, had finally built to this one moment. This was where everything changed, where I finally took back what was mine. I know what you're trying to do, Caitlin, I said, keeping my voice steady. But it's too late. You've already made your move. You and Jeremy thought you could just walk all over me, but now it's my turn. She looked at me, her face a mixture of anger and defeat, and for a moment I thought she might lash out. But she didn't. Instead, she just stood there, silent, her eyes full of regret. I wasn't done yet. I hadn't even begun to show her what happens when you push someone too far. The phone rang again. I knew who it was before I even looked at the screen. It was Jeremy. I ignored it. He was probably trying to figure out how to fix this mess, just like Caitlin had been. They were desperate now, but there was no coming back from this. I turned my attention back to her, and for the first time in a long while I saw something in her eyes. Was it fear? Or was it the realization that she had finally pushed me too far? I couldn't tell, but it didn't matter. The damage had been done, and it was too late to fix it. I'm done, I said simply. You don't get to take from me anymore. You don't get to use me to fix your problems. I've spent my life building, and you're not going to tear it down just because you're in a little bit of trouble. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak, but no words came out. It was like she couldn't find the right ones to make this all go away. She had used her tears, her manipulation, and now she was left with nothing. I stood up, walking past her without saying another word. She was still standing there, like she didn't know what to do with herself. Get out, I said, my voice quiet, but the finality of it was unmistakable. I'm done. I don't want to hear from you or Jeremy again. Not until you understand what you've done. Not until you realize that you've burned this bridge. Caitlin didn't move at first. She was staring at me, waiting for something, maybe hoping I'd change my mind. But I wouldn't. Not this time. Not after everything she had done. Slowly she turned and walked out of the room. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. She was gone, and I knew she wouldn't be back, not without a new understanding of who I was. The house felt quieter now, the air still and heavy. I could still feel the tension in my chest, but it wasn't fear or anxiety. It was something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. I had taken back control. I had done what I needed to do, and now I was free. I sat back down in my chair, looking around the room. The silence felt like an old friend, the kind of silence that settles in when the storm has passed. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I had won, and nothing, no one was going to take that away from me. As Caitlin left, I knew this was far from over. The house was only a small part of the story. What I had done was more than just reclaiming a piece of property. It was about showing her and Jeremy that they couldn't take advantage of me anymore. I had one last card to play, and when the time came, they would understand exactly what it felt like to lose everything. If you think this is the end of my story, you're mistaken. The true consequences of their actions are still to come, and when it does, you won't believe what happens next. The silence after Caitlin left was unsettling. It was as if the world had suddenly stopped spinning, like everything was frozen in time. But I knew it wouldn't last. This was only a temporary calm before the storm. I had done what I needed to do, taken back control of my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone walk all over me again. But the consequences of my actions weren't just about what I had done to Caitlin and Jeremy. They were about what was coming next. and I wasn't prepared for the real fallout. The next few days were filled with a kind of eerie stillness. I kept to myself, the way I liked it, spending my mornings drinking coffee and staring out the window at the yard. The leaves in the garden were turning, fall slowly making its mark on the land, reminding me that time, even in its stillness, was moving forward. It wasn't until Sunday afternoon that I heard from Caitlin again. She showed up unannounced, just like the last time. This time, there were no tears, no begging. Instead, she walked in with an air of quiet determination, as if she had made a decision about something. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, eyes scanning the room, probably trying to find some way to read me, trying to figure out if I had truly given up on her. I didn't speak either. I wasn't about to make this easy for her. Finally, she broke the silence. "Dad," she said, her voice low, steady, almost empty. "You've made your point. I get it now, but you need to understand something." She paused, looking me dead in the eye. "You're not the only one with a plan." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, letting her continue. "You really think that you've won?" she asked, her voice growing colder. "You really think that cutting me off and canceling the house sale is the end of this? You're wrong, Dad. This is just the beginning." For the first time in our conversation, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was she threatening me? Or was she just trying to manipulate me again? Either way, I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of showing any weakness. "What are you talking about?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Caitlin crossed her arms over her chest. "You don't know everything, Dad. You never have." She let the words sink in. "Jeremy and we've been making moves. We've been working with a lawyer, getting everything in place. This house, this place you love so much, is already gone in more ways than one." I blinked, not fully understanding what she was getting at. My mind raced. "What do you mean, gone in more ways than one?" She smirked just slightly, but it was enough to send a chill down my spine. "You think you've been so clever, don't you? You think that canceling the sale and the mortgage was enough to stop us. You've been busy locking everything down. But what you didn't think about was the trust. The one that Ellen and you set up before she passed. The one that we're the beneficiaries of." The words hit me like a brick to the face. The trust. I had completely forgotten about it. Ellen had set it up years ago, a way for her and me to ensure Caitlin's future was secured. The house, the property, it was all supposed to go to Caitlin when I passed, but I'd taken it for granted that we had plenty of time to figure it out. And now, Caitlin had found a way to use that against me. She wasn't just trying to sell the house. She was trying to take everything I had left. "You think I don't know about the trust?" I said, trying to mask the panic in my voice. "Ellen and I made sure everything was set up the right way. There's no way you can just take this from me." Caitlin shook her head slowly, her expression turning smug. "You really don't get it, do you? The trust wasn't just for you, Dad. It was for both of us. It was set up to protect me when you're gone. But the thing is, I've found a way to make it work for me right now." The pieces clicked into place, and I felt my blood run cold. Caitlin and Jeremy had been working with a lawyer behind my back to access the trust. And if they had figured out a way to bypass me, then the house, the money, everything could be taken away from me in a blink of an eye. "You're lying," I said through gritted teeth. "There's no way you could have done that without my consent." Caitlin stepped forward, her eyes glinting with something I hadn't seen before: cold calculation. "I didn't need your consent, Dad. The trust was set up to allow me access when the time came. And guess what? That time is now." I took a step back, feeling the floor beneath me seem to tilt. My mind raced, trying to find a way out of this. But the truth was undeniable. They had been planning this all along. They hadn't just wanted the house. They had wanted everything. They had been waiting for me to slip up, and now they had found their opening. "You don't have to do this, Caitlin," I said, my voice quieter now, but my mind spinning. "You really think that everything I've done for you was a lie? You really think I've spent my life building this for nothing?" Her face softened for a split second, like she was remembering something from the past. The times I had been there for her, the way I had always tried to protect her. But just as quickly, that softness disappeared, replaced by something colder, more ruthless. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said, her voice distant now. "But this is bigger than us. This is bigger than you and me. I can't keep waiting for you to give me what I deserve. I've worked for this. I've earned this." I stood there frozen, my mind reeling. How had it come to this? How had I let my own daughter turn on me like this? I couldn't believe it. All those years of hard work, all the sacrifices I had made for her, it meant nothing to her now. Nothing at all. She turned to leave, but just before she reached the door, she stopped and looked back at me. "You'll get a letter from the lawyer tomorrow. Consider this your warning," she said, her voice calm, almost too calm. "You don't have much time." And with that, she was gone. I stood there for a long time, feeling like the world had just been pulled out from under me. Everything I had worked for, everything I had fought to protect, was slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know how to stop it. Tomorrow, the lawyer's letter would arrive, and then the real battle would begin. But in that moment, I wasn't sure if I had the strength to fight anymore. I had already given everything I had to Caitlin, and now she was taking it all from me. The next day came and went in a blur. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't bring myself to eat, couldn't sleep. The weight of Caitlin's betrayal hung over me like a storm cloud, dark and oppressive. The house, the property, everything I had fought for, it was all slipping through my fingers. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a part of me was still holding on to a flicker of hope. But that hope was quickly fading as I prepared for the letter that would change everything. By late afternoon, I had received the letter. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope in front of me. It was neatly addressed to me, no return address. I could already guess who it was from, the lawyer that Caitlin and Jeremy had hired. I knew this was the moment everything would either fall apart or fall into place. I opened the letter slowly, my hands shaking slightly as I peeled back the paper. The words blurred together at first, but as I read through them, it all became clear. Caitlin had succeeded. She had figured out a way to access the trust and take control of everything I had spent my life building. The house was no longer mine in the eyes of the law. She had already begun the process of transferring ownership. It was over. The letter outlined the details, the trust's clause that allowed her to take control in the event of my incapacity, which she had argued had already begun with my age and health. It was a tactic, a legal loophole. She had used it against me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Not now. Not after she had already taken the first steps. The room seemed to close in on me. I could feel my heart racing, the panic rising in my chest. How had I missed this? How had I let her get so far? But then, as I read the last line of the letter, I saw something that made my stomach drop. "We expect you to vacate the premises within 30 days. If you refuse, further legal actions will be taken to ensure compliance." I sat there frozen, staring at the words. My whole life, everything I had worked for was being taken from me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. But then something changed inside me. It was like a switch had been flipped. I wasn't going to go down without a fight. I wasn't going to let Caitlin win. She thought she could just take what was mine just like that. She thought that by playing her cards the right way, she could walk away with everything. But she was wrong, so wrong. I had spent too long being the good father, the dutiful provider, the one who always gave. But it was time to stop giving. It was time to take control of my life again. And if Caitlin thought she could walk all over me, she was about to learn the hard way that I wasn't the same man I had been before. I picked up the phone, dialing Tom's number again. I needed him now more than ever. He answered on the third ring, his voice gruff but familiar. "Roy, what's going on?" "Tom," I said, my voice low but firm, "I need you to help me take back everything they've stolen from me. It's time to fight back." There was a pause on the other end. "What happened? Did the letter come?" "It came," I said, my voice hardening with resolve. "And I'm not going down like this, Tom. I'm not going to let Caitlin and Jeremy get away with this." "All right," Tom replied, his tone steady. "I'm going to need you to come in tomorrow. We'll go over everything. There's still a chance we can fight this, Roy, but we'll have to move fast." "Good," I said, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. "I'm done waiting." The next few days were a whirlwind of legal meetings, paperwork, and strategy. Tom had pulled in a few favors, reached out to people he knew in the legal world, and together we crafted a counter-strategy. The trust Caitlin had used to her advantage was still intact, but there were loopholes in the clauses she had exploited. Dee found an angle, one small crack in her plan that we could use to turn the tide. I had never been a fighter, not in the traditional sense. I had spent my life working with my hands, building something out of nothing. But now, I was fighting for something much bigger than a house. I was fighting for my dignity, for my right to not be manipulated or controlled. And that, I realized, was something I couldn't let go of. It was a week before the next confrontation. I hadn't heard from Caitlin or Jeremy since that Sunday, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they came knocking. And sure enough, on a Thursday afternoon, there they were standing on my doorstep, looking like they had the world in their hands. Caitlin didn't even bother to knock. She just opened the door and walked right in, followed by Jeremy. I didn't even give them a chance to speak. I had already prepared for this moment. "Sit down," I said, my voice calm but firm. They both stood there, surprised by my demeanor, but they didn't sit. They didn't need to. I was the one in control now. "I know what you're here for," I continued, my eyes never leaving theirs. "And I've already made my decision. You can try to fight me in court, Caitlin, but you've forgotten one thing. I know the law better than you think, and I'm not going down without a fight." Jeremy opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. "No more games, no more lies. You're not going to take what's mine anymore. Not this time." Caitlin's face twisted, the anger and fear mixing in her eyes. "You don't get it, do you?" she spat. "You've already lost. We have the law on our side." "Maybe," I said, walking slowly toward them. "But the law doesn't always work in your favor. And this time, you're going to find out the hard way that I'm not the fool you think I am." I could see the uncertainty in their eyes now. Caitlin had been so confident, so sure she had won. But I could tell she was starting to realize that this fight wasn't over yet. And when the legal battle finally came to a head, when the truth came out about the trust, about the clauses she'd overlooked, she would realize too late that she had underestimated me. I wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when I finally had the chance to take back what was rightfully mine. The legal battle that followed was long, painful, and messy. But in the end, Caitlin's manipulation caught up with her. The trust wasn't as airtight as she had thought, and the legal loopholes I had fought to exploit became her undoing. By the time the court made its final decision, the house was still mine. Caitlin and Jeremy, left with nothing, had no choice but to walk away, their plans shattered. They had tried to take everything from me, but in the end they lost it all. And as for me, I stood there in my house, my home, knowing that I had fought for everything I had. I had taken back my dignity, and that was more than any property could ever offer. This is where my story ends, not with defeat, but with a lesson. A lesson for anyone who thinks they can walk all over someone who's been nothing but loyal, who thinks they can take without consequences. You can only push someone so far before they push back. If you think you know how this story ends, think again. Sometimes the real revenge isn't about the money or the house, it's about reclaiming what's yours. And that's what I did.